This video is brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino.
What's good, folks, family, friends, loved ones, enemies, frenemies, wizards, witches, muggles, mudbloods, people of Middle Earth to another episode of Disguised Coverage, the only podcast that gives you an equal amount of blueberries in each muffin, presented by the best pizza in Buffalo, New York, empowered by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino. I am your host, Anthony. Welcome to another edition of Disguised Coverage. A little bit of some somberness in my voice, in the tone. We are here to have a discussion on where the Buffalo Bills go from here. And the here that they will be going from is another season that ends in a loss to the Kansas City Chiefs, a familiar territory for this Buffalo Bills team, and a spot that kind of raises some questions for them going forward. What do they need to do? How do they need to do it? The whys and all the answers that come from it for a team that seemingly is in the upper echelon of the NFL and is built to succeed in the playoffs and is built to beat a multitude of teams, but just cannot get past this one. How does that factor in who they are as a team overall, their design, their structure, all of these pieces in a multitude of ways? And that is going to be the focus of tonight's episode. Different night tonight, so I appreciate you folks tuning in, whether you're watching live, watching later, listening, whatever have you. Eric and I were supposed to do the film room on Tuesday. He's on vacation. Things were a little wonky, so we ended up moving that film room episode to next week. But I kept Disguised Coverage on this adjusted time because I had a guest coming on for this show, and I didn't want to make things too wonky. And with that being said, that's a really good segue to bring in friend of the show, Mr. Kendall Mirsky. It's been too long for us to talk about the Bills, to talk football. Unfortunately, it comes with sadness, but thank you for taking the time. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it has been a minute. What was it, like mid-season or like
I told myself to go back and look, and I didn't. So
I can't even remember. I think it's before week 9, but who knows?
I was thinking somewhere. I was like, yeah, like I know we initially bye week. No,
that they had a late bye this year. The whole year
so
is just
not.
like
a blur. I don't remember anything.
Blur.
Yeah, I have like all the games have like meshed into one
exactly.
for me, and I can't remember which, like, especially the division games where I'm like, oh yeah, and like Mac Jones beat the Bill. I'm like, that didn't happen this year. That was last year.
Everything's just like flashbulb memories. It's like, okay, so Josh broke his hand week 1. All right, and then he had the funny bone thing late in the season.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything's like flashbulb memory scares.
Yes. Screenshots and bits and pieces. Quick question. Are you a Dragon Ball Z guy or Dragon Ball guy?
No, I'm not. There was like a brief moment in my life, but if you reference anything, I will not get it.
Okay, so I'm going to pull up this super chat from Anthony Johnson. Anthony, thank you for being here. Thank you for the super chat. This is one of the greatest comments I've ever read. So to kind of put in perspective, Vegeta, who is my favorite Dragon Ball character, is the perennial always a bridesmaid, never a bride. He's never, like, whatever story arc they are in, whatever saga, he always comes up short. He's never the one to vanquish the big bad, never does it. It's always either Goku or Goku's son Gohan or someone tied to that. Vegeta never, it's one of my biggest gripes. Like, he never gets his due. He is the perennial, always a bridesmaid, never a bride. So one, this hits me in the feels because I love Vegeta. I love Dragon Ball Z. And I think this is so friggin' spot on because the Bills have become this like perennial, always a bridesmaid, never a bride type of deal, at least when it comes to Kansas City. I mean, but also too, like, to be fair, everybody is kind of the bridesmaid, never the bride when it comes to Kansas City because they continue to run through everyone. But it just feels like the Bills always give them the closest game or the toughest game, and they continue
also the most entertaining game. Like every single time, it's the instant classic that the Bills are on the wrong side of.
Yes, and that goes to Vegeta. Like, Vegeta is just constantly on the wrong side, but like awesome moments or these great battles or these great like epic things, and it's always like in a losing effort that somehow leads to Goku vanquishing the big bad. And it's Goku again. Like, Goku is essentially Superman and John Cena all wrapped up in one. They're all the same person, which is absolutely infuriating to me. But Anthony, thank you for the super chat. That's awesome. A plus S tier comment. One of the best I've ever seen. And thank you very much for the super chat. And again, for being here in general. And Kendall, kind of using that to set the table for this conversation where we set the table for the offseason. Where's your head at? We're several days removed from the Bills' loss to Kansas City in Kansas City. How are you feeling? Is there anything you're drilling down on? We've got some comments already, which we'll start to incorporate as we go forward. But is there any one thing you're drilling down on? Is it a player? Is it a play? Is it a moment? Is it large scale, small scale? As you sit here knowing that the Bills are out again at the hands of the Chiefs, where's your head at just kind of thinking about this?
I mean, it's really tough to calibrate because based on like the preseason expectations and then where you are once the postseason starts, you have to recalibrate expectations based on what's actually happened. It's really tough to pick anything where you're like, oh, what's the big takeaway? Because going into the season, everyone was, oh, what do we do with McDermott if something happens? What do we do with this if we can't get over the hump? And like, I know everyone hates the status quo of just, banging your head against the wall, doing the same thing, expecting different results and all of that stuff. But I mean, this year was kind of evidence that they didn't do the same thing and expect different results. Like they tried something new offensively, at least. You would probably be able to speak more to the defensive side. I didn't watch a whole lot of film this year, but I struggle to sit here and get depressed about like the arc of this franchise and frustrated about not being able to get over the hump. Like, yes, it's frustrating, but the Chiefs are on the precipice of making NFL history. And like, that's just part of it. Like sometimes timelines are your worst enemy. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be so much about being inferior to this team or just not being good enough or whatever it is. Like the Bills are still in the top tier of the NFL. They were in the Final Four. Like you look at it in a March Madness bracket.
Good call.
You're happy to get to the Final Four. Of course you want to.
Thank you for saying that. I say Final Four all the time, and I feel like no one else does. I'm always self-conscious about it. But
yeah, conference championship is like whatever, colloquially the right thing to say for the NFL. But like,
wow, colloquially, for a little peek behind the curtain, Kendall joined like 10 minutes before, and we were just shooting the SHIT behind the scenes, and Kendall was busting out these crazy like high level vocabulary words, and colloquial is just another, like he's just off the cuff.
It's been a bad month.
It has been a bad month. A lot of news. But yeah, you are just crushing it. But continue. I'm sorry. I heard that. That made me perk up again. I was like, man.
No, it's just the whole point though is just like it's really, really hard to sit here and process the context of the season and how successful it actually was despite the ending and how it ended. Because, I mean, Josh Allen said it in his interviews, like how proud he is of this team, how proud he is of Sean McDermott. Like, there were so many good sound bites for the end of season where it's like, yeah, this team feels like it was growing in a season that it was supposed to take a step back.
We talked about it in the offseason, like the revamp.
That's inspiring.
Yes.
Like, that is legitimately inspiring to see a team overperform because of what your franchise quarterback. Like that's this whole thing is this, what is this team going to look like when you have to pay your franchise quarterback? We always talk about in the NFL, the teams that are primed to win are the teams like the 49ers who aren't paying their quarterback anything. Well, what happens when you pay your quarterback? They have to elevate everyone around them. And to be fair, while Josh did that, I think he was enabled to do that because of the work that Joe Brady did this offseason with the full season of implementing his system, his philosophy, imparting that onto Josh and how valuable that was for Josh and the entire offense. Now we're going to get into the minutia of the whole thing and the nuance of where this offense could improve and what the whole team can do in like the small ways to tweak things and improve. But holistically, when you look at this season, and it sucks, and I talked to friends about this going into the Chiefs game, going into the Chiefs game, I still felt really, really happy about the season because the team was always, no matter what happened in that game, probably not no matter if they got blown out, I probably wouldn't feel the same way, but they are so much further ahead of schedule than anyone thought, even the most optimistic Bills fans. So that is really inspiring in terms of they have more cap space this year than they did last year. Yes, they're still over the cap projected right now, but last year was ugly. They still have draft capital. Like there are still ways to improve this roster. You still have the franchise quarterback. What? Right, we can't get over the Chiefs. Who can? The Bengals did once, and they didn't even win the Super Bowl. Like it's just a tough game. It's really hard to win the Super Bowl, and the Bills are knocking on the door. And I'm hard pressed to believe it's not going to happen in Josh Allen's career with Buffalo. It feels like it's going to happen, and honestly, it really did feel like they were closer this year than any other year. They got the ball back in Josh's hands with a chance to win the game. That hadn't been the case in prior years against Kansas City. It's always been that like, oh, the ball's in Mahomes' hands last.
Yes.
And sure, the Bills could have scored too quickly and something could have happened. Right. We don't know. But, like it was actually set up. The defense did their thing and they actually got the stop where it wasn't a touchdown. It was a field goal on that Chiefs last scoring drive. So like there are small considerable improvements in this process, and the whole thing of Sean McDermott's never learning from his mistakes, but that's always what he says at his pressers. Like maybe he is a little bit, but maybe it's a little too incremental for the fan base. It's a really, really tough balancing act with the emotions of this whole thing.
Yeah, and even speaking of the emotions, real, I was going to type it, but it's easier just to say because I know he's watching. RJ says the loss still feels like it happened last night.
Yeah,
I'm still so angry. I have never been this angry after a loss. RJ, I need you to tell me in the comments why you've never been this angry after a loss. I think I have an idea, but I'd like to know why specifically. It's so funny. This again, I alluded to it, and you mentioned a bunch of pieces. Like we came into this season, you and I, whether we were talking in text or when I had you on the show multiple times, like we talked about like, okay, the revamp. Okay, it's not a tear down, it's not a rebuild, but they are tweaking some things from a roster standpoint, a body type standpoint, schematics, a lot of it, right? And it was like, we'll see how it works. Like we don't really know. And a lot of it, especially offensively, worked. Like their commitment to the run game, the formational and alignment diversity that they went into mixed with the personnel and how they were able to access more of the menu without having to turn the page and what it afforded them, how much easier it made Josh Allen's life. You've got these injuries on the defensive side of the ball, but like Cam Lewis steps in for Taron Johnson and mitigates that a little bit. Milano goes down early. And even though Spector isn't a world beater when playing alongside Dorian Williams, like at some moments he has some nice things. Christian Benford emerges. Like there's all these little pieces that go through. James Cook had this crazy good year. Like, and so like as the season went on, I was like, well, they're like kind of doing better than I thought, or they're hitting like the highest part of what I thought the ceiling could be. And then they beat Baltimore. And I was like, this season has been a win. And I think sitting here right now for me, like my frustration, I think it comes down to more from the fan side than the schematic side. There's schematic problems I have from the defense, from that Chiefs game, which I'm sure a lot of folks do. But the big thing, you mentioned it, like I just thought as the game went on, I was like, you know what? I was calm all day and I was like, I think they could do this. And then it was like 21-10 and I was like, maybe I was wrong. And then the game keeps going and I'm like, okay. The thing that got me was they forced the field goal and it's 32-29. And my thought was exactly what you said. It's flipped.
Yeah.
Usually the Bills get held to the field goal and the opponent, the Chiefs or someone else drives down. They're going to lose. We've seen this game a million times for the Chiefs.
In the gotta have it moment, the Bills are on defense, not offense.
And we've seen that happen to a million teams against the Chiefs. Like whoever they're playing up. The other team only got a field goal, so it's 32-29. The Chiefs are down. Mahomes is going to drive them down. They're going to score a touchdown. They'll win 36-32, and that'll be it. But I was like, no, it's flipped. Like the Bills got the stop. The Bills have the ball. They've been cooking. Like this could be it. And to know that it wasn't, and then also to have it come down to like a drop from, and then everything that happened with that play, like the lack of recognition or understanding the tendency, like even I'm no matter what anyone thinks, like who does this and operates in this space, we will never know as much football as the people who are actually out there in the NFL doing football. Like I will not know football like Josh Allen or Joe Brady or anybody like that. But formation, corner from the boundary, when you were into the hash on that side, the short side of the field, Spags loves to bring corner blitzes. And when you go condensed and reduce your formational width, he likes to blitz even more. And he also likes to blitz in high leverage situations. And like the fact that they were just so gamed up from a protection standpoint and an identification standpoint. But of course, like it's that one moment. And it's like, oh, of course, because it always happens like against you. But even with that, right? Like Allen makes this ridiculous play.
Yeah.
Kincaid drops it. Granted, it was fluttering a little bit, and it wasn't necessarily
it's not
catch,
the
but he should have
easiest
caught
catch,
it.
but it's catchable.
And for me, it's like, and again, it's setting like using that to set the table for this conversation of where we go from here. Like they easily could have won this. I shouldn't say easily, but there's a very realistic shot that they go
realistically
up
could have won,
and that's game. Not even taking into account. Did Dalton Kincaid have that first down on the screen on that third down? Did Allen have the first down on the sneak? Should they still have had the ball up 22-21 and a first down in Chiefs territory? And how does that change? Forget all that. Like just at the end, like they could have won it that way. And so I think it adds to your points of like the muddiness because they are so close, but it also feels like they're not because they can't get over the hump. And
it makes it feel further just because it's a repeated. It's a trend. It's becoming a pattern, and it makes it feel further than it actually is. I totally get what you're saying there.
Yes. And then because they continue to lose in different ways, what do you do to fix that? Like last year was like injuries, and it's like, okay, like try not to be hurt. And then the year before granted it was Cincinnati, but like the defense gets rocked. You're like, okay, you got to change some things defensively. And then this year, the defense didn't do great. I had issues with the defense for a majority of the year. Several, again, reared their ugly head in the playoff game, but even more so from a schematic perspective. It just seems like every year that the loss happens, it's not like, well, it's because they didn't solve this one issue. There's all
the same thing that's recurring.
Yes.
It's always like a tweak of something different for why they're losing. And this is the problem with the whole fire Sean McDermott thing. And look, anyone can have their whole mindset on that, but that's what happens when you have a Hall of Fame coach versus a very good coach. Like Sean McDermott is a very, very good coach, but we're going up against the greatest coach in the NFL now that Bill Belichick is retired, right? So those adjustments that he's making in real time or season over season or week over week, whatever the adjustments are for that Chiefs team, they're being made at an expedited rate relative to the rest of the league, right? Like the things that are happening there are happening at a higher level than anything else from a coaching standpoint around the league. And that's not to say that the coaches we have are inadequate, because if you strip the Chiefs away from the NFL and then you compare the Bills coaching staff to their peers, their 30 other peers, not their 31 other peers, you're like, oh, we stack up very well against the NFL. So it's really just a really, really tough comparison because you're doing it against the best. And that's why you have to beat the best to beat the best.
And that's always been my thought with the whole McDermott conversation. And again, we've had this conversation on the show so
many times.
For years, it feels like
we've had the first 18 minutes of this podcast so many times.
That's actually, that's literally true. And my thing has always been like, okay, if you want to, I am fine either way. And we've said it so much. Like if you want to make the case to make McDermott go, cool. If you think he should stay, cool. My thing has always just been like, there's no guarantee either way from the drop off or the benefit, right? But there's just the idea that they can't get past this one team. And it's so wild because the goal is to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But you can't get past this one team, which is hindering you from getting to the Super Bowl. But year over year, they're having all this success, like statistically, record-wise, playoffs-wise, like national attention and recognition for certain pieces. And it's like weighing all of that and how it feels. And it's just so weird. I always see like the stats of like, oh, the most wins in the last like 4 or 5 seasons or whatever. And it's like the Bills and Chiefs, or like
Yeah,
the Bills
the
have the best
Bills and
winning
Chiefs
percent.
are always neck and
Like,
neck in the last
crazy.
like 5-6 seasons.
But I always just feel like they're just so far off. And yeah, to be the best, you got to beat the best type of deal. And it just, for whatever reason, they seem to come up short against KC. And I sit here now, again, still several days removed. I haven't finished watching the game film from the AFC Championship because some of it just, I got through the first half of the defense and it pissed me off. So I stopped and I didn't finish the second half. And I pivoted and started watching, I started diving into prospects. So like I was watching
something that pissed you off catalyzed your scouting.
Yeah, I was like, I'm going into scouting stuff. So I was watching Michigan tape to watch Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. Bills have no shot at Mason Graham, but I'm just watching to scout because, my process. But yeah, I was like, screw it, I'm not watching this tape right now. Like, it pissed me off. But as I sit here now, yeah, I really thought like the stars were aligning for it because, again, it felt like the shoe was on the other foot, right? The Bills get the ball. Just got to make sure 13 seconds doesn't happen because they had the ball before and it worked against them. But I was like, man, like, this could really work. This could really align. This could really be the time, so on and so forth. But it just feels like, for whatever reason, like we outlined several of them, it just feels like they're so far and, kind of moving into that direction, right? So the Bills sitting here, another loss at the hands of the Chiefs, feeling like they're close, but also so far at the same time. In terms of where they go from here, whether, to kind of get over that hump, and whether that hump is Kansas City or that hump is just getting to a Super Bowl, winning it, whatever it is. What's your first point or thought for this offseason? Where do you think the Bills need to go for here? Is it a position group? Is it a player? Is it a certain schematic element? Like, where's your head at when, okay, here's what needs to be done in the offseason to kind of tick some boxes and finally get them past this point?
I don't know if I have like first in terms of priority, but I guess I'll just start with the offense. I want to get a deep threat in some capacity for this offense because we talked about it around the time when Amari Cooper was acquired, and who knows, maybe Amari comes back and he's utilized more next year. But the point is this offense was so lateral and horizontal and run game centric. Like everything was based around the run game. And then if you're attacking through the air, it really didn't feel like you were attacking past 10 air yards. And it really doesn't complement the idea of being a run centric offense. If you're going to focus on the run game, the counterpunch from defenses is to allocate defenders towards the box, towards the line of scrimmage, go single high, whatever it is. It leaves them vulnerable to the deep stuff, or, if they're sitting in cover 3, deep crossers, whatever it is. We don't have the personnel to do that outside of Curtis Samuel. Like we saw one clutch deep over from Curtis Samuel this whole year.
Against Denver.
There's probably more. Yeah, there's probably another one that I'm forgetting. But
no, that was it. And it was more, not to take it, not obviously his speed played a factor, but it was more schematic than anything. Like they motioned into the 4x1 and Surtain got confused, which is crazy that they confused Surtain, and Samuel was wide open.
But to the point, it's like that needs to be a threat in this offense because I'm not going to sit here and act like the Chiefs have this full offense of you have to protect every inch of the field, because they don't. Like, they're just really efficient in their efficiency. Like, that's the way they play. And the Bills are kind of doing a similar thing where they're just trying to play high success rate football, always ahead of schedule. Like, that's the Chiefs and the Bills this season. It's high success rate football. You're not necessarily chasing explosives like you once were, but you need to be able to reach into your tool bag for those explosives at some point, because when a team figures you out, and thankfully the Chiefs really didn't figure out the run game too much. Like, James Cook was really going in this game. But, if they start to allocate defenders into the box a little bit differently, you need to have a counterpunch for that. And this is kind of the adjustment before your opponent makes the adjustment. Like, I hope they're self-scouting themselves and they realize, the offense was great this year. We were really efficient. We had a really high success rate across the board in all facets of the offense. but deep passing was a problem. So this year, Josh Allen, he averaged 10.5 yards per deep pass this season, which is 26th among 34 qualified quarterbacks. That's his fewest in a season since 2019, and he's never had fewer than 12 yards per deep pass since 2019. Again, he had 10.5 this year. So he was really inefficient. And then you look at just the volume. He had 690 yards on deep passes, which was 9th most in the NFL, right? But he had the second most attempts. He had the second most deep pass attempts. Like, he was just so inefficient. And then on top of that, career low 2 deep pass touchdowns, tied for the second fewest among those 35 or 34 qualified quarterbacks. The players that had 2 or fewer: Mac Jones.
Oh, I was going to say it's going to be so bad.
Daniel Jones. Anthony Richardson and Brock Purdy. So
Richardson is somewhat surprising.
It was a little surprising, but he was so inefficient.
And also the benching for a little bit too, so he didn't have the full volume.
Exactly, he didn't have the volume. Yeah. But the point being is, like, we know Josh Allen, we know he has the deep ball, we know he has the rocket arm, we know all of this stuff. But you need to get him the horses in the stable to do this, to unlock this. And it's not to say he couldn't do it this year. Like, we saw it with Mac Hollins, in those small moments. But you need to get a guy, whatever, in the draft. Like, deep threats in the draft are there through 7 rounds. All 7 rounds. There's always a deep threat that waits all the way until the last round of the draft. Ideally, you don't wait that long, and you get a guy who's a deep threat now and has potential to develop into a 3-level separator. Now, that's high hopes. That's not always guaranteed. That's what Stephon Diggs. But right,
they should bring Diggs back.
I don't think that's happening.
Right. He's a free agent.
But and this is kind of the thing. Like, it goes against the philosophy that Joe Brady built this year. You don't want to allocate too much to the wide receiver position, because you want to make sure you have the DNA of these guys who are okay being a role in the offense. So you need to get a guy that can unlock the deep part of the field past 20 air yards, and hopefully he develops into more through time. What that investment looks like, if it's the draft, if it's free agency, whatever it is. Like, I know there's people out there thinking, ooh, can we free up the money for T. Higgins? Yeah, that would be sick. But what does that mean for the philosophy of the offense? Like, aren't we just reverting back to this, we need to force feed this guy because he's our best guy? It kind of just devolves what we just built in 2024. So it's a careful balance, but it needs to be unlocked. There needs to be a deep threat, like Troy Franklin on
Xavier Worthy.
I mean, that's a high investment, though. You know what I mean? But right, Troy Franklin for the Broncos, like he was someone who fell in the draft a little bit, like someone who's getting devalued but still has a niche. Like, he needs to fit that niche in the offense, because that's just a little tweak that the offense can use to evolve in 2025, in my opinion.
That's fair. I really like that point as the lead in. I think, again, I'm so horrible in my memory. We talked about it during the year. I think I had you on sometime after the struggles against Houston and Baltimore.
Yeah.
And we talked about these struggles outside and deep. We talked that there was essentially, like, once you got to like 10 yards, shadow everything past it, and then shadow everything on the outside. Like, there was just nothing for the Bills there. And then they got Amari Cooper, and it opened some things up a little bit. But the hand-in-hand nature of how they built the wide receiver room, I thought at times this year reared its head from a separation standpoint, because you did not have these dudes that could just win one-on-one or couldn't separate. Some of that, I think, there are some schematic pieces tied to that as well, either in terms of design from Brady or in terms of execution by, guys not hitting the right landmark at the right depth to, clear out somebody to make space for the guy running the arrow route. You're running the hitch. You're really just trying to obstruct somebody legally, but you don't run it at the right depth, or you don't hit it at the right pace. This happened multiple times with Dawson Knox that immediately come to my mind. But not having that presence. And again, that's tied to, what are you looking for? You're looking for bigger bodied physical receivers that can function in condensed looks and are a threat to be a blocker or a pass catcher, which ties into your ability to maximize personnel, put defenses into a bind, all the things that we've been talking about for years. that schematic idea of like, oh, if I'm a defense, do I play nickel? Do I play base? Do I need a big nickel? Can we play zone? Can we play man? Like, can we fit the run and still handle the pass? All of that is created because of what the Bills have at wide receiver. But then at the same time, you're allocating resources to that and you're mitigating some of the explosiveness. Like again, I think we talked about it when we had you on here in the middle of the season. All the Bills, like explosive passes, like the deep ones, majority of them were like off script. Like, Allen rolls out and hits Shakir against Baltimore, or it was back shoulder throws to Keon Coleman against Baltimore. It wasn't these in structure things. It was, okay, let me just throw it up and see if my dude can win one, or Allen does something Josh Allen related and makes something happen. I thought the in structure passing game, for as good as Brady was and as good as Allen was, I thought the in structure passing game struggled more this year relative to how much it was talked about. And I want to say in structure, I purely mean like guys separating, route concepts working, creating kind of easy buttons within the structure of that down the field for the most part, to your point. Not necessarily the easy buttons where like, oh, these routes cleared out. I'm gonna check it down to Cook and he's gonna get 8 yards. We didn't see a lot of these like 21-yard gain through the air. 17-yard chunk play here. I even think you tweeted it. What was Allen's first 20 air yard touchdown of the year? Denver?
God, I don't know.
No,
it was in the regular season.
Yeah, right, but towards the end.
It was really late.
Like week 17.
Probably week 16 or 17.
Yeah. You tweeted that out, and that was his first one all year. Like, he wasn't hitting stuff deep. He was missing. And granted, some guys were getting open. Like, Mac Hollins is wide open against Houston. Allen missed him. So there were some opportunities.
It goes both ways.
Yes. There were some opportunities. Oh, good call, Dylan. It was the Amari Cooper touchdown against the Jets.
Yes. Yeah.
Great call, Dylan. Well done.
Crazy.
Zach of all trades coming in too. Yeah. It's called crazy good catch from Amari Cooper.
That's what it took to get his first. That's why I tweeted it, because I was like, not only is this a nuts touchdown, but that's the first one of 20 plus air yards this entire year. Like, that's how hard it was.
Yes. And when you have that plus the run game element,
it should be easy to complement that and find that on its own.
Yes. And you also make it harder for yourself, because if you have this strong run game, but you're not a threat deep or not a threat to win one-on-one, teams are just going to play single high and be like, well, we'll load the box to try and stop the run and gap out with numbers. And also, we don't have to worry about getting beat deep or outside necessarily. And I don't necessarily know if they need I liked the committee approach. I saw some comments where people kind of ripping Mac Hollins a little bit. I loved what Mac Hollins did this year as a special teamer, as a blocker, and as all jokes aside, he was a tremendous like wide receiver 4.
Yeah.
He won in man.
Incredibly serviceable.
Yes. He had some big catches and some big moments. He was a tremendous blocker, and he was a good special teamer. I don't know if they necessarily need a true one, but
no, I don't think they do either.
No, but I think they need some more. Oh man, so many comments coming through. I want to pull up everything. I just see everything going through. But I do think, to your point, like, they need some sort of added dynamic in the form of explosivity. It could be somebody who's amazing. It could be another Shakir type player where it's another easy button for screens, somebody who's got juice or great after the catch. Or for me, I'm in a similar boat to you, somebody who can stretch the field vertically to either open up space in the intermediate, or somebody who can just win vertically and Allen can chuck it up for him.
I think the thing we always go back to, and people in the scouting community always go back to, is if you're building a team and you're building a wide receiver room, you want to build it like a basketball team.
Yes,
you want to build it like a starting 5.
Is that Daniel Jeremiah who said that?
DJ says it a lot.
Yeah,
he might have gotten it from someone though. I don't know who started.
He was, because he was an actual scout.
Yeah. No,
Eagles,
for sure. I just forgot who, because I learned it from someone who scouted for the Browns and the Saints. But he started with the Eagles. So I don't know. Someone must have passed it down.
Someone created. Someone's out there listening, and they're like, it was me.
That's me.
I created that. That's me.
Yeah. But to your point, like, if you're going to do wide receiver by committee, that whole basketball team metaphor becomes so much more important, because you're using a committee. You're not just relying on your small forward to go get you 40 points a game. right? Like that, it becomes more important because you're using every single position. And right now we're missing, for the sake of the metaphor, we're missing a point guard. We're missing the deep threat. Like, until you fill that starting role, this offense isn't going to reach its full potential. And it was fantastic this year, but there's just an element where you can be ahead of the game for when everyone's ready to adjust to your offense in full year two of Joe Brady. People are going to be ready. They're, like you said, going to stack the box, play a lot of cover 3, play a lot of single high. They're going to do a lot of
tons of cover 3, tons of cover 1, like just
You're going to need to be ready for that. And it's better to know that now than what happened this year. And you're like, oh, we got to trade for Amari Cooper.
Yeah.
Because you're not always going to have that luxury and the flexibility mid-season to do that. It takes 2 to make that trade happen. So why not get in front of it? It's just a niche guy. He doesn't have to be a wide receiver 1. Like you said, the committee worked, but it can work even better. The philosophy is sound. It can just be improved in 2025.
I like you tying the basketball analogy in here, and I wanted to add to it. Like, I think like they have too many power forwards. They need another. They need like a small forward. They need somebody like a 3-and-D type of dude.
I would argue they need another guard. I think the only, I guess Shakir and Samuel are the guards, right?
Yes.
But it's all forwards. It's Mac Hollins. It's Coleman. And the way Cooper was playing this year, he was the small forward, I guess. Right. So
but
it's like
even their guards, like this is a complete vibes thing for me, which I hate doing. I don't think Curtis Samuel plays as fast as like his 40 times indicate. Like, I just don't think he's this huge burner. Yeah, there's just something. I never felt that way at Ohio State. I never felt that way in Carolina, in Washington.
But he also doesn't play physical enough to be a quote unquote forward for the sake of this metaphor. So it's like he's a guard. He's a guard that doesn't have the athleticism for this metaphor to work.
Yeah,
like I don't know how else to put it.
They have like it's like they have too many. Yes, he is 100%. But it's like they have too many power forwards and too many of the same type of guard, where it's like dribble, drive, penetrate, good defense guards. Like, sweet, that's awesome. But I need more of a pure slasher or someone who can hit on the fast break. Yeah.
To your point, like Samuel and Shakir just overlap too much.
Yes.
Like that's really all it is. Like, it just needs to be a guy that doesn't overlap with those skill sets as much. It needs to be a guy that, okay, for whatever we'll call it, video game ratings. Like, okay, his short and medium route running is garbage, but his deep route running is 85 plus.
Yes.
And you're going to win on that. Yeah, look, Darius Slayton, that's a great poll. So it's something like that, where it's like, what you're going to get from the guy, what he's good at. Hopefully he can improve. Obviously we kind of know what Darius Slayton is, but if you're getting like a rookie version of that archetype, like that'd be ideal. And you can get that kind of guy in round 5, 6, 7.
Yes. Give me somebody. I think the Bills have too many dudes who are like 88 to 91 Madden speed. I want more. I want someone
95
who's like,
plus.
Yes. I want someone who's 95 plus, and their acceleration is also 95 plus. Like, there needs to be more of the juice in that room.
Well, because the acceleration speaks to the ability to develop at all levels of the field.
That's exactly it.
We're always there.
We're right there. Always. Yeah. They just, and then again, if you think about the schematic possibilities, the juice with that run game, with the threat of the run, with the actual running backs and with Allen, but
it makes
even
the whole thing indefensible.
Yes. And then even, again, tying it into, you can still go condensed looks, like you can still motion somebody, you can flex them however you want to use them. I think also tying into that too, and some of that conversation is, I do wonder and not just because he dropped the ball, but Dalton Kincaid had a very interesting year. I thought he would be more, and again, he got hurt early on. I think he was playing hurt a majority of the year. He definitely got hurt later in the year as well. I'd like to see what I thought he would be more of a mismatch generator and or creator this year. Part of what, and I don't want to get too much into him unless you would like to. I think his schematic usage is capped because he's just not functional enough of a blocker to take advantage of being when you're in 12.
Yeah,
he can get sometimes, like, he can get a nickel or he'll dig a save, and it's not for lack of effort. it's not there. Like, he's not cracking on an edge. He's not getting a linebacker. Like, and even sometimes he'll go out and he'll go to block like an aggressive corner and they'll go through him. And the whole idea of having a tight end that's a versatile pass catcher is because it's like, well,
you can line him up at the Y, and you can do.
You're not putting Dalton Kincaid in line as the Y. Like, and if you are, you have to do what the Bills have done at times, which is like arc him past the edge, use him as an influence block, and then arc him to the safety or arc him to the nickel or whatever you can do, because he's not winning at that point of attack, or not even winning, sustaining. And I'm hoping some of it is more injury related, both from a pass catching standpoint and from a run blocking standpoint, because he's not scared. He's not shy. Like, he's trying, he's willing. You're just not seeing it. And so I think he ties in heavily into this conversation too, because he, in theory, I thought he was going to be the tip of the spear when it came to the passing game this year.
Yeah, I think everyone was there.
Yeah, and, we did not see that from him. But, yeah, I think that's a great point. Juice, the verticality, that type of speed.
It's a good little touching point on Kincaid, because I think we all thought that. And I think through the season, I was getting frustrated on why he's only being used in the flats, on bubble screens, on all of these RPO flats, things like that. But
then he has that awesome deep catch against Baltimore, or was it Denver?
I think so. Every now and again,
up deep catch. Yeah,
you'll catch him on a corner route or something like that. There was the adjustment touchdown where I think he caught it middle of the field, in between the hashes, on Josh Allen doing a little scramble drill, and he catches it at the 10 or something like that and runs it in. So there are moments, but I think you're right, where because you're limited in how you can use him from an alignment standpoint, you're then limited in how you can use him in the route distribution. And that, I didn't put that together until you said that, because all season I was like, can we actually get this guy out in some intermediate routes, not just behind the line of scrimmage stuff? Because he's great after the catch, but it'd be sick to get him great after the catch where he's catching the ball already 10 yards down the field, not he has to go pick up 7 because he just caught it 0 yards from the line of scrimmage.
Him being the RPO bubble guy. It's like him and Shakir, and it's like, sweet, go. I would love to
once again, that's more overlap. We don't need more RPO bubbles, RPO screens, cover 0 beater screen guys. We don't need more of that. We need to evolve past that and get multiple. We know it exists. We know it's an easy button, but we need to be more multiple.
Absolutely. I agree. I like that. What else is on your mind for where the Bills?
I actually want to make sure that you don't have anything else on the offense, because everything I have left is defense.
Okay. Oh man, I have so many. I have little nuggets here and there or pieces.
What's your
honestly
biggest one worth talking about on the offense?
My biggest one was what we already talked about.
Okay.
But I also thought this last year, even before they got rid of Diggs, I was like, they need. They need
because we did see it in 23. Yeah.
Which is why not even taking the low-hanging fruit. I also thought he was my wide receiver 4 coming in this past year in the draft class. It's why I wanted Xavier Worthy.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the verticality, what he could do, I thought he was tougher than he was getting credit for. I also thought he could be used for horizontal leverage, like Kansas City has been using him. But it's part of the reason why I was banging that drum for get me that juice guy, the field stretcher. I don't care if he'll ever be a true one, but he can be a Z. I can throw him in motion left and right. I can use Xavier Worthy on mesh, because if his guy gets clipped for a second, he gone. If you don't get him, you're done. So that my number one was the verticality piece. My tying into it also, I kind of wonder, or tying into the offense, I should say, I do wonder what the run game looks like going forward.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of their commitment to, and this might be purely reactionary from the Chiefs game, I was just yelling at my TV to and I know some people are saying in the chat, just run James Cook more. He only had 13 carries, but I thought he was so effective.
Yeah, it kind of felt like the Ravens last year, where they just didn't run the ball enough.
Good call. The in-structure passing game was struggling.
Mm-hmm.
Allen looked shaky early on, and right off that first drive when he almost threw 2 interceptions, I was like, fine, run the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Put in Reggie Gilliam and give me power and counter and run it down their throat like the Texans did. Give me that.
Mm-hmm.
And Cook had some really nice runs. I mean, that second both touchdowns. The first one, he makes something out of nothing and beats everyone to the sideline, turns the corner, gets a great block from Mac Hollins against McDuffie, scores. The second touchdown on the option on 4th and goal, he gets hit in the air and gets hit again and then has the wherewithal to put the hand down and stretch. Like, that was phenomenal. Dude.
For me, it was the stiff arm on
to Najee Johnson on duo. He bounces duo and puts him to the turf and then gets
because
up
it's
the
one
sideline.
thing for him to just bounce it outside and use speed. He bounced it and used physical. Exactly. He broke his trend where he bounced it, but stayed physical, fought through contact, and then hit the next level. Like, for me, that was the moment where I was like, we need to get this guy the ball more because he's going to be the reason we win this game. Like, you could tell he was about it. He was about it on Sunday night. He wanted that win seemingly more than anyone else on the team.
Yeah. I just thought he would get fed more. And Brady's done that this year. Like, oh, this run game's working. Cool. We're going to run the ball 50 times. Like, stop it. And just what he brought, I thought this season as a whole was really strong for him. I can't remember how many times I tweeted it or posted it, but the physicality that he, you talk about that stiff arm, the physicality that he played with this year. I don't know if it was because I don't know if it was already his plan or like because they brought in Ray Davis or because he saw Davis do some runs and he was like, all right, I'm doing some of that. Like he was falling forward so much. He was getting hit at the 30, but going down at the 29. Like the yards after contact, not from like he shook a dude and broke a tackle and got forward, but like multiple guys are popping him and he's still moving his feet in contact. He's getting forward. He's driving through guys. You saw more of a physical punishing kind of element without losing the juice and the speed. He could bounce duo and beat your guy to the corner like, Riley Moss against Denver. Oh, Moss takes too shallow of an angle. Boop, I'm around the corner and I'm upfield. Or he can stiff arm your corner into the dirt or put his shoulder through a linebacker and go forward a bit. And I wonder what they build upon this year. I guess this isn't necessarily what I think they need to do. It's more of my question. I wonder if, like, how much is Cook a factor in next year's offense where is Cook like the true number 2 behind Josh Allen in terms of like how the offense runs? And then how does that tie into the Josh Allen run game and all these pieces? I do think Cook is good. This offensive line is going to come back as it was this past year. The offensive line is good. They have a good stable of running backs. Like, I wonder how much they continue to evolve the run game, change it, tweak it. What do they add? But I think more importantly, like, how much do they make Cook a focal point, especially whether or not he gets a second contract, I think is always interesting with running backs. But if you're not, do you just go in and be like, we're going to give him like 500 touches this year because we're just going to run him into the ground because we're not bringing him back? But then I'm also like, that's crappy, but also like, I'm kind of here for it because he's been fantastic. Like he had a crazy good year. I wonder how he factors into kind of the off-season plan, the shift, because he was very good. This run game was very good. But then that again ties into the pass game, the explosivity, the vertical presence. Like that those are my 2 big ones for the offense.
I think the toughest thing to project with James Cook is the snap share more than anything, because it's just everything about this offense in its skill positions, like outside of the offensive line and quarterback, it's committee. It's committee based. Like everything's running through multiple people who have multiple roles in each position. So every single reason on draft day that we thought James Cook would need a complimentary back, or himself was a complimentary back, he bucked that this year. He proved us all wrong that he can be a featured back. He can be a full-time starter. He can command 20 touches a game. He showed us he can.
Yeah, the only thing he needs to do, Robert hits this good one. Next step for Cook is just the pass pro, so we can be on the field nonstop.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So that's where I was going next, where it's like, it really all depends on what they want to do with Ty Johnson. Because like Ty Johnson was really great this year.
Yes.
But a lot of the stuff he does in theory can be done by James Cook, and the areas that James Cook can't in theory should be done by Ray Davis. So it's a really tough, and this is a good running back draft class too. not even to get started on that. But
I want to talk draft so bad because I'm already in that mindset,
not,
but I'm like, why can't you?
We're not there yet.
We're not there
We're
yet.
not quite there yet. Yeah, it's a really tough thing to project because this, like we talked about the wide receiver by committee, but the Bills usually have at least 2 or 3 wide receivers on the field.
Yeah.
Really, what, 2 running backs were on the field like maybe 3% of the time.
Yeah, they weren't a big
so
21 personnel. And
yeah.
honestly, I feel like I'd have to go back and chart or look at my charts, but I feel like when they went 21, there was a good amount of pony as much as it was like fullback running back
Gilliam,
action. Yeah, they're not like a big 21 at all.
No.
They're going heavier, it's like 12.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't even know what to say on it because I'd be what you said where sure, just bang him into the ground if you're not gonna re-sign him.
Yeah.
If those are the plans, like I mean it's unethical, but
Just get Ashton Genty, and then all we do is run the ball with Genty and Cook, and then we'll go play action with Allen for like 5 deep shots a game.
I think it's going to take a couple of trade ups to get Genty.
Yeah, it would, man. They'd have to go high for him. Yeah, that would be.
But
yeah.
hey, he would fit the offense.
God,
philosophy of the offense, he would fit perfectly. But it's a good running back draft class. I don't really think running back is in the cards this year. There's a part of me that feels like James Cook is going to get re-signed. And I think it's going to stay committee because that's how Joe Brady was kind of brought up. Like Joe Brady, wasn't he Sean Payton disciple?
Yes.
So
which is
also
another factor into the wide receiver piece.
Yeah.
No disrespect to Marcus Colston, but that was essentially Sean Payton's best receiver in his time. It was Marcus Colston and Robert Meacham and Devery Henderson and Ted Ginn. And then it was like the run game. Pierre Thomas would have like 100 catches every year. Yep. And then it was Reggie Bush, Deuce McAllister, Darren Sproles, Jimmy Graham, when Jimmy Graham was a monster.
It's always by committee because that's the thing with Sean Payton. And that's the thing that Joe Brady's doing. He understands the value of not knowing who the go-to guy is. There is so much value to being an offense that doesn't have a go-to guy, a bunch of B pluses across the board where they're all going to get the job done for you when they're asked to do it. But the defense has no idea who's going to be the focal point on any given play from a play-to-play basis. They don't know. So I think they're going to keep the status quo in terms of the running back position. I don't think it's going to be more volume for Cook, even though I kind of wish it was from a snap count perspective, but it's probably best for his career. It's probably best for this franchise. It's best for the offensive philosophy to kind of keep the status quo on that, which is a little depressing in a sense, because I think we all want to see more James Cook, but I think it does more for the offense to keep the balance, I guess, especially based on what happened in this championship game. I think we need to tweak it a little more, and we need to see a little more James Cook next year. Not to say it needs to be like, say it was 50% James Cook this year. It doesn't need to be 70, but maybe 55 to 60 next year.
And as long as they maintain the commitment to the run and the foundation to it, I'm okay with that. Like I think this needs to be, when I say run first, I don't think that means like 60-40 run ratio, but the run needs to be the table setter and the foundational element. When they get away from it, or in this past year, when they got away from it, it hurt them. It made Allen's life harder. The run game is the key to stirring the drink and making the drink. And then you get to take advantage of Allen and let him keep the mutant alien unicorn in the cage until he really needs it, because you have that run game in that piece. There's like some little tiny detail pieces on offense that we'll dive into as like the off season goes on. But from a high level, those are my 2 big ones. A lot of them for me are on the defensive side of the ball. So I'm excited to get your first one for that. Before we dive into some defense, I wanted to pull up this quick graphic from our friends at BetUS. Kendall, kind of painful a little bit here, but I thought this was a fun graphic, even though, again, football is pain. Super Bowls are tied 29-29, AFC, NFC. Obviously, that tie has to be broken in this upcoming Super Bowl. As of right now, try to eliminate your heart, which I know you can do because you're analytical and objective. Where's your head at for this Super Bowl? And in terms of breaking this deadlock, you thinking Chiefs? You thinking Eagles? Where's your head at?
I actually think even like no heart in this. I think the Eagles are gonna do it. It's gonna be interesting. My bet my idea is that the Chiefs are gonna do everything they can to make Jalen Hurts beat them with his arm.
Mm,
And I'm sure they're gonna blitz him because that was an issue for him last year. But the
mm,
Eagles definitely improved on passing versus the blitz this year, especially relative to last year. So
mm.
I think the Chiefs are going to do everything they can to mitigate Saquon and make Jalen Hurts win with his arm, but I think they're going to get it done. I think that the Eagles have a much better defense than the Bills do, or at least statistically and on paper.
Mhm.
So I think
And
if they can,
schematically, like Fangio at the helm.
yeah, I think they should be able to limit the Chiefs to under 30, and I think that offense can get to 30 pretty easily.
My only trepidation, the last time it was Chiefs Eagles, I also thought the Eagles had the better team. And I mean, they came close to winning it. I think that was the Mecole Hardman big punt
Yep,
return. Yeah,
uh,
right? Or no,
I
Kadarius
think
Toney?
so. I don't even know.
It might have been Tony. They
I
had a
couldn't
huge
tell you.
punt return in one of those. I thought, oh, that, and then also the Nick Bolton fumble return touchdown
Yes,
at the end of
that
the first half.
yes.
I thought the Eagles had the better team then. I do think the Eagles also was Tony. Thank you, Lucas in the chat. Man, the chat is just awesome with answers tonight. Thank you guys so much. My brain is fried. I'm sad and angry. And tired. And that's a horrible mix for thinking clearly, colloquially. And I thought the Eagles had the better team the last time. I do think they have the better team now. It's just so hard for me to pick against the friggin' Chiefs
That's
because they
always the
just
thing,
seem,
yeah.
they like, all jokes aside, it just seems like we're in like a Thanos situation here where they're just inevitable. And it's just like, all right, like, okay, like you're just kind of waiting for it to run out a little bit. But I do think it's going to be a fun game. I am pained to watch it. I probably will. I'm in my head Sunday night. I was like, I'm not watching this Super Bowl, and
Yeah,
I've kind
I
of come
did the
around a
same
little.
thing, and
Yeah.
then I was like, "Who am I kidding?" Come
The
on
only
now.
one I didn't really watch, I did not watch Bucks and Chiefs because I
Really?
wanted to just throw up. Yeah, Brady versus the Chiefs. Like, I don't want either of those teams to win. This all sucks. I think I turned it on midway through the
Yeah,
third quarter. I started watching it midway through the third quarter. Plus, that was the COVID year. Like, the world was terrible. I was just like, I'm not
yeah,
about this. Yeah, it was like
that's a
my
fair
two.
point.
That would be like if the Yankees played the Yankees in the World Series. I'd be like, I'm not watching that. Like, this sucks. Like, I don't want to see this at all. But I do.
Uh,
Yeah, I thought this was a cool pull for them.
yeah,
I
I
would have
did
had no
not know
idea that
this
it's
was a
like
thing.
29. Yeah. 29, which I thought was an interesting little fact. And again, obviously, this graphic presented by our friends at BetUS. If you're looking for a new sports book this football season, BetUS is the answer. They have the fastest payouts in the industry, a 150% bonus on your first deposit, and then a 125% bonus on your next two deposits, up to $2,000 with code YouTube150. That's YouTube150. They have a fast and easy deposit and withdrawal process, 24/7 personalized service, 365 days a year, live wagering on all major games, the best betting variety in the business. They allow you to get 10% back on your net losses twice a year, and they also can give you your very own personal account manager. Go to BetUS for all of your sportsbook and betting needs. Kendall, let's pivot now to the defensive side where a lot of my offseason questions, not just because of how the season ended and what the performance was against Kansas City, but just for me, a lot of talking points throughout the year that all come back to the defense. Where do you want to start for that side of the ball?
I'm gonna start run defense, and I know you're gonna love this because you're already scouting defensive tackles. But
Yeah.
honestly, my 2 points for the defense are both gonna be points based in research.
Okay.
But then it's kind of gonna pose a question to you on like, well, the title of the episode, where do we go from here based on this? Because I've like come to some research conclusions, but it's not necessarily pointing me in a direction of like, oh, how do we tweak this? Oh, this is an obvious tweak that we should do, or an obvious player we should pick up, or something like that. It's just kind of information, and I don't even know what solution it points me towards. So that's kind of what I'm going to be using you for
Okay.
here.
Copy that.
So the thing with the run defense this year was that I'm going to use one of your favorite words, mercurial. It was really mercurial.
Nice. That's a good one. That's a good one.
Like it was so crazy. The research behind this is how often the Bills were able to create havoc in the backfield. Like they are so disruptive, but they are so hot and cold. they are either we're going to disrupt you in the backfield
Mhm.
or we're going to give up an explosive run. It's there's just almost no in between.
Yeah.
And because of that, they were one of the easiest teams to pick on. Like for fantasy purposes, you just pick the running back playing the Bills because they couldn't
Yep.
guard them out of the backfield as a pass catcher, and they were almost always guaranteed to break off at least one 15-yard run. So the stats behind this, Bills had a stuff rate. Stuff is a tackle at the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage. Bills had a 23.7% stuff rate in 2024 on opponent rushes. That's the highest in the NFL. They contacted opponents behind the line of scrimmage on 47.1% of their rushes in 2024. That's the second highest in the NFL. But they allowed a 14.3% explosive rush rate, second highest in the NFL. So your highest and second highest on, activity behind the backfield, but also second highest at allowing 10 plus yards on runs. And that's on a per run basis. So it's not a good rate. So here's my thing. Here's my thing with it. Like, I know this whole thing is schematic. Like those 3 stats that I just threw, that's a schematic thing. It's not even necessarily a skill. I mean, it is a skill set because it's the archetype they're chasing and the schematic that they need these players to fit into. They're not a 2-gapping team. That's not what they do. They want these guys to see the direction of the run and either shed over top or underneath and try to get into the backfield. And sometimes when they all shed underneath, there's a cutback, or when they all shed over top, there's a cutback, like, or a bounce, or
They
whatever
worked
you
in
wanna call it.
some gap and a half, but it was like not with it with increased amount of regularity because at the to your point that their core, they're still 4 down, 1 gapping, penetrating front.
So my question to you is, what can the Bills do to mitigate this, or is this just who they are? They're going to live in this world where if they stop you on a first down run or a second and medium run, then they're staying ahead of schedule as a defense. Like, is that their mantra where it's like, okay, whatever, you get 15 yards on first down, you try that again on a first down run, we might get you into 2nd and 12 and now we're ahead of schedule. Is that kind of where it is? It's just an aggressiveness thing. Like that's where McDermott shows his aggressiveness as a defense.
So I love this starting point from you because this ties into a big point of the offseason focus for me.
Lovely.
And I categorize it, and I think I got this from Joe Marino said something similar to this when I was on Locked On with him heading into the playoffs. They lack stoutness up front. And the way I've talked about it all year, you put the numbers together, you talked about it. The way I've always put it together, the Bills defense was like this year was very much like we're either going to get got or we're going to get you.
Yep.
And so, yeah, it's either like, hey, we got you in 2nd and 13, or, oh, you just ripped off a 14-yard run or like an 8-yard run. Like, uh-oh. And I don't think they're going to change who they are. Sean McDermott wants to be a 4 down, 1 gap penetrating team. I don't think we're going to see that change. So my solution to help this, I really do think it's just body types inside. Like they need more guys who can win on the interior. And I think it starts twofold. I think Daquan Jones needs to be more of a rotational guy rather than like the starter opposite of Ed Oliver. And whoever starts opposite of Ed Oliver needs to have more of a plugging type of mentality. Someone who is hard to get off the ball, whether it's double teams, whether it's base blocks, they have to limit displacement from an individual level. There are certain their schematic adjustment was, hey, we're going to run blitz or we're going to gap out and load the box. And that's how we're going to stop the run. And they're doing that because they're not getting enough individual wins. The defensive line isn't doing their job. And even more so, the second rotation of guys. I'm never going to be out on a rookie after 1 year. But man, Dwayne Carter was just no bueno in any way, shape, or form for the majority of this year. And then Austin Johnson came on a little bit at the end, but was also in that same kind of boat. I don't think Jordan Phillips does much other than he's just pure vibes, and he wears a coat underneath his shoulder pads, which is cool. I know he had that awesome rep where he lifted up the left guard like off the ground against Kansas City and created that sack that led to the field goal that I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. But they just I think they need better bodies in that. And I still like Dake. I think they need 2 new bodies in that defensive tackle room. They need an arguably another one opposite of Ed, or they need 2 high-level 2s. Like, I just think they need better bodies because they're not going to change. They're not going to 2 gap more.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe they'll gap and a half a little bit more, but still, like, we know what they are. They're, a 4, not even a 4 down, over front, 3 tech to the front side. Like, that's what you're going to get. And so if you're just going to play that, and I don't mean this negatively, or disparagingly, but if you're going to play that bland or vanilla type of defense, teams know that. You have to have the horses that win.
Your individuals need to win. Yeah,
and I think they need, I think they do things differently schematically, and we touched on some of them. I just don't think they're going to do that. Like, I think
they don't change the fronts unless it's pass rush.
Yes. And every once in a while you'll see like, oh, okay, like against Baltimore. But again, Baltimore's a severe example. They came out and it was like 3 down, 3 linebackers, 5 down. Dorian Williams is essentially a Sam. Yeah. And it's like, okay, but again, that's
very
severe.
Unique. There's like literally only one team you have to do that against in the NFL.
Or every once in a while over the past couple of years, like they'd use a tight front or they'd go with a bare front. And I'm like, oh, okay, but it was literally like 5-6 plays throughout the year. And you could like count them on your hand type of deal.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're going to change what they are schematically. And honestly, I know a lot of people's problems with the defense in the playoffs or McDermott in general. But this defense year in and year out is decently to pretty productive. So I understand them not wanting to change it. Even from I was talking about this with Adam from Cover One, who's been in the chat here. I was talking about this or DMs earlier today about this. Like, I personally prefer a different type of defense. Like, I prefer a 3-4 hybrid type players where I can be as different as I want on any given week in order to beat you. I can blitz, I can drop whoever I want. I have edges who can rush, but also
it's the same as our offensive philosophy that we like. It's just about multiplicity and being able to match your opponent.
Bang. So the Bills defense for me is a little quote unquote like bland, but on the large, it's been successful. I don't think they're going to change that. So if you're not going to change that, you need better individual guys who can win for you.
You know what it is?
That's my solution with that. Actually, hold on. Wait. We have a super chat.
Hit this
Robert,
first. No, you're good.
Robert's been crushing it with comments. And thank you for the super chat, Robert. So thank you for being here. Thank you for the monetary donation. He said, thanks for doing this after a rough one. Appreciate you for that. And he says, and you can get to this whenever it's topical. Can you explain those desire? Oh, this is kind of
it's perfect.
Oh, and then he said it after. He said, oh, never mind. You're already answering this. My bad. No, you're all good. I'm speaking and I lost track of the chat. This is on me. But kind of where we are. Can you explain the desire for smaller backers, but an unwillingness to get bigger guys up front? Go Bills. And this is also part of the stoutness issue for me.
Right.
Because Terrell Bernard is small.
Yeah.
Matt Milano is your bigger linebacker, but he's also small, is a former safety. You're not filled with bangers at that second level. I mean, no team really is. Most off-ball linebackers are smaller today to be able to live in the run and the pass.
Oh, yeah.
It hurts the Bills even more because if your defensive line is losing individually, they're not protecting your smaller linebackers. So then your whole spine is compromised. And when it's happening with your first wave and your second wave on the interior, it's a significant problem. So my answer is, I think you need more stoutness. I think they need to prioritize body types that, and again, this also comes to the thing, right? Like, sorry to speak so much on it, but like, I know his skill set is niche. I would have been playing Ilianku for a majority of the year because he's a good run defender. Doesn't really give you anything in terms of pass rush, but you know what? The other guys that do a little bit of both aren't really good enough at either. So I'd rather one guy who's siloed but is pretty good at that one silo than taking other guys that are meh to below at both silos. Yeah. And so I don't know if they're going to go for that body type. Like, I feel like they have to strike it perfect. Like Kenneth Grant from Michigan, where he's big and he's stout, but he also has some juice. Not a ton of pass rush moves, but he has enough juice. I don't know if they're willing to dip into the body type, similar like what we talked about for years. We were like, man, it'd be great if they could get more bendy and athletic at edge. They don't want to do that. That's not who they are. But I think they need to change and get more stout up front, and it ties that individual skill set and trait piece that they do not have.
It's really frustrating because the amount of years that we just keep banging our head against the scouting
we do this every
wall,
year. Every offseason, you and I do this.
These archetypes. It's limiting us.
We
It's
have this
limiting
archetype
the
conversation via text and on the show every offseason for the last 3 years.
3 or 4 years. Yeah, it just limits the pool that they can draft from because of this. And it's really frustrating. The analogy that I was going to share before the super chat was you were saying how vanilla the defense is.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Bengals offense. But the difference is, yeah,
they got dudes on that offense, though.
exactly. There's a reason it works. Like
Yeah.
schematically, it's super vanilla, but it works because they're winning their one-on-ones.
Yeah, because they have friggin' Jamar Chase and T.
And obviously, I'm not saying, we should go tank for the 4th overall pick or whatever it was to get Jamar Chase on defense. But that, that's the analogy of, hey, if you're going to be vanilla, you need your guys to win. And I think, Ed Oliver does what he can, but he's an undersized speed rusher with
his whole game is predicated upon penetration. Even when he's taking on a double team, he's trying to drop the knee or reduce the surface area to penetrate the double. He's not he's not gonna gum it up and reduce displacement. Like, he's still trying to penetrate versus the double. And that's also why they're also susceptible to kind of being moved and displaced with zone runs. But they can get hit on those gap scheme runs like wham and trap and crunch and power, like these runs where they just get displaced because they're flying upfield and bang, you're getting caught. Or even when you're working in the run blitzes, or you're trying to do a scrape exchange or gap exchange, I should say, if you run it against the wrong type of run, you're feeding into those down blocks and creating a bigger alley.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You're almost damned if you do, damned if you don't sometimes with the type of schematic changes they do to adjust, which is why, and again, this is easier said than done, but it's got to be body types. It's got to be the players. Like, they need more of an individual. They need more individual winners. Guys where, okay, Timmy's not getting moved. Like, that's it. Like, whether it's a double, whether it's single, like, we know if we need him to control the front side A, he's going to control the front side A. Like, that's it. More often than not, he'll get it done. And they just did not have that for the heavy majority of the interior of the defensive line this year.
But to your point, if they got someone to do that, are they willing to sacrifice this idea of, okay, we put this guy to gum up front side A, but if it's a pass, then they're not going to double him because he doesn't have the juice to pass rush, and then they double Ed.
Yes.
Like, are they willing to do that? Because that's really what the cost benefit analysis of this whole thing is.
They need Vita Vea is what they need. Somebody who can push a one-on-one guy.
Is that this team, the founding and the growth of this team under McDermott was with Star Lotulelei.
Yeah.
Like, where did that archetype go? Where has that gone? Because now it's just some guy who's on and off the practice squad every 3 weeks with Elianku.
They've really, man, like the interior was interesting this year because even like Austin Johnson, I like that signing, but I thought they were going to use him how he was used in like New York and even Chargers to a degree, but he was a one tech. He slimmed down and they had him doing more 3 and 1. So I was like, who's the plugger? And it was like, no pluggers. We're just going all juice and all penetration.
I think there's just so much emphasis on pass rush that they're forgetting like the complement of the two defensive tackles.
But so that's fine. I don't mind that. But then you need your defensive tackles to be good pass rushers. Like Johnson, Phillips, Carter, like their pass rush productivities were all like 2.4, 3.3. Like they were bad. They were not good. So that's what part of the Elianku thing for me was like. It's like, well, Elianku,
if you're not going to be good at pass rush, just
give me the guy who's good at the one thing. And so even at that, it's like, well, we want someone who can do both, or we're prioritizing the pass rush piece. Cool, but they're not giving that. And it's so weird we know Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane both think the same. They're in lockstep. The defensive line is the engine. Like that is how they build the defense out. But every year it feels like they're chasing their tail with this defensive line. And I think a lot of it is because of their unwillingness to move from the archetypes that they subscribe to.
I agree.
And or just not getting the right people to fill those archetypes.
Yeah. It might not even be. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. It might not even be just an archetype thing. It could be A and B, A or B.
Yeah.
But it's either archetype or it's that if they're drafting these guys within the archetype, they're just drafting or signing the wrong guys.
Like even the signings, like I just didn't. And again, it's middle of the season, so what are you going to do? But like you're bringing on Quentin Jefferson and Jordan Phillips, like guys who were casted off bad teams, and then like you're playing both of them. Like I think that's a sign. And I know people, Jordan Phillips' best years are in Buffalo and yada yada, and
Yeah.
but it's a spot where, man, I think
it's been a thing for years. Like even before drafting Ed and since drafting Ed Oliver, it's always been a spot where it's like, yeah, it's average.
Yeah. And they're just kind of chasing their tail with it. And when you've got smaller linebackers and you play nickel, so your strong side linebacker, quote unquote, is Taron Johnson sometimes.
Yeah.
You need your dudes up front to win. And again, too, if they're not going to be stout, then they have to be game wreckers. Like they have to penetrate to the point where it screws up the whole play because they got in the backfield so fast. And again, so that's fine too, right? If you're not going to be stout, if you're prioritizing the penetration, that's fine. But then they need to win more with penetration, and they're not. So they either need to get better penetrators or they need to get guys that are more stout and then go from there, or change their evaluation process or archetype, which I think is a larger ask.
Yeah, man. That feels like a lost cause.
God, that pisses me off.
So that one's probably the most frustrating one. Yes. We'll get to my next one after you, unless that was overlap.
That was technically my first one as well. My second one kind of just, I don't know if you have this one or not. This again is more of a question for me. What they do at the other corner spot opposite of Benford. Rasul Douglas, UFA this year. They restructured him last offseason, added void years onto his deal, but didn't extend him, which to me makes it seem like he's probably not coming back. I also would like them to get a little younger and more athletic in the secondary as a whole. So I love Rasul Douglas, but I wouldn't mind if they go in a different direction. I don't want to drill down too much on Kaiir Elam, but I do not think he is him. You and I had our reservations years ago when he was drafted. We spoke about them on social. We spoke about them on this show. We spoke about them in the film room. He's kind of been who we thought he was in not a great way. But, never know. Maybe he turns the corner somehow, some way. I really want to know what they do at corner. I think corner's a sneaky need where like their first pick in the draft could be a corner.
Oh, absolutely.
Like where you're looking at somebody at the end of round one, or they sign a free agent. Either way, I'm just interested to see what they do at corner, who they bring in, and what the skill set is. And how does it fit? Are we looking for somebody that is more zone-based, more man-based, more size, length, physicality, or speed, juice, technicality? Like what skill set do they look for? Because they've had a bunch, right? Like Trey White is a much different type of player than Christian Benford. But Christian Benford and Rasul Douglas are much more similar than they are different. So do they continue to lean into that? And all three of those guys are different than Kaiir Elam. So what do they lean into? What type of skill set? What type of traits? What type of tools? And then kind of it ties into safety a little bit for me as well, which I know is one of your pieces at some point. So I'll kind of table that. But yeah, I want to know what they do at corner. Corner's a premium position, and they have a question at that, a significant one at one of their starting corner spots.
I mean, I'm wholeheartedly with you on this. Full disclosure, my next point is not positional, and I guess none of my points were really positional other than that run defense one. But I'm lockstep with you on this. The positions of need going into this offseason. We talked about it: wide receiver, cornerback, safety, defensive tackle, in no order. It's those four. They need to be addressed with priority. It's really interesting, especially looking back and juxtaposing it with what happened when they drafted Kaiir Elam and what we perceived was going to be a philosophical shift in coverage. And it kind of was a little bit. Like there definitely was some more aggressiveness, some more like cover one blitz. There was a lot more man that was implemented into the defense, coinciding with drafting Kaiir Elam, whether he was or wasn't on the field. Like it coincided with the timeline of drafting Kaiir Elam. So it'll be really interesting to see, like you said, this skill set, and it should be it should point us in the direction of what they want to do on the back end of this defense from a coverage perspective, because obviously this was a transition year in the secondary, and it went well for portions of the season. Like the first part of the season, no one could pass outside the numbers on the Bills. Like what, first 7-8 weeks, no one could pass on Douglas or Benford.
Yeah, they were doing work.
It was really difficult for people to get a pass beyond 10 yards outside the numbers. It was really good stuff. But obviously, you put stuff on tape, things become a little bit more predictable and you figure out how to attack certain things. So it'll be interesting to see how they tweak it, how they feel like they might need to address the other corner spot. I think what you said about Benford and Douglas being more alike than they aren't is a really interesting point, because to me, it feels like that's what they want to do. They want to get to like somewhat, I guess, bigger physical zone guys.
Guys who can come up and fit the run. You can play cover 2 and they can be force defenders on the outside. Yeah.
But they also have like the length and the physicality to press man if they have to.
Yeah. And enough athleticism to not be just turnstiles or liabilities. They're not
exactly.
They're not like Brandon Browner where it's like, this guy can't move.
Like if they get beat off the line, like they can still recover and the length will help them recover at the catch point, stuff like that.
Good point.
To me, that feels like where they want to go with it, but it would also be nice. Like I'm personally, and this kind of speaks to your thing on you prefer a defensive scheme that emphasizes multiplicity. I would prefer a complement. I would prefer a zone cover guy with a little bit more quick twitch, like a Trey White type of zone guy, because then if you face a team that has, I'll use the Eagles as an example. If you face a team with AJ Brown and Devonta Smith, you want to put that quicker twitch guy on Devonta Smith and you want to put the physical guy on AJ Brown. If you have two of the same corners, you're mismatched somewhere. So at least you kind of have the option if you don't have two of the same skill set. But obviously there's the other way of looking at it where you can just kind of like hammer down on the teams that also have similar skill sets. So it'll be interesting to see how they address that. But I 100% agree that needs to be addressed in one way or another. Who knows? Maybe it's just Rasul Douglas. But
It's just
we'll see.
It's just Douglas and Douglas. They bring everybody back.
That's not to be like boring or anything. Like I would welcome it. But based on the whole conversation of like what could happen and the potential of it, it would, I guess, be boring in that
a little
sense.
Anticlimactic. And I would welcome him back, but I also would welcome an opportunity to add more athleticism at that spot.
Exactly.
And to your point, a little more quick twitch or some long speed. I got to stop. We got another super chat. Robin, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for the super chat. Robin says, love you boys with an exclamation point. That's awesome. And he says, it's this damn defense with all these losses. Patrick Mahomes plays the Buffalo defense, not Josh Allen. Yeah, it seems, year after year, no matter what the performance is in the regular season for the defense. I think this one was a little more kind of predictable because of the struggles of the defense throughout the year, even when they were healthy. But it just seems year after year, we're sitting here having this conversation about the defense just not showing up in some capacity in the playoffs, regardless of who it is. When they get bounced, it seems like it's the defense more often than not. Yeah, I feel that, Robin. Thank you very much for being here. And again, the super chat and good comment. Kendall, what's your next thought here?
All right, my next thought is right on cue. Defense, specifically third down defense. I know this was a big thing amongst a lot of people, and this is another one, like I said, where I'm gonna give you a bunch of research, and I'm just really curious where you go on this and how you would address it moving forward. Because I mean, third down defense, situational defense is always really nuanced and really specific, and there's never just one answer. But I'm curious where you go with it. The Bills, so bad on third down defense, and it's so uncharacteristic for them through this Sean McDermott era, and even more specifically the Josh Allen era since 2018. So they allowed a conversion on third downs at 43.8% rate, which was the 29th in the NFL. That's the worst in the Josh Allen era. And they had not eclipsed 40% in any of the previous 6 seasons. They were at 43.8 this season. The previous worst was 39.8 in 2022. That finished 13th in 2020. Oh, excuse me. Yeah. 39.8 in 2020, which was 13th that season.
Good pull.
So it's just like, just to, set the table. This was a bad year for them and bad year against their peers in the league in this stat category.
Yeah.
So this is where it gets weird. They allowed a very long average distance to first down on third downs. It was 7.6 yards to first on third downs. That was the average on third downs across the season. It was 7.6 yards, third and 7.6. That's the average.
Yeah.
5th in the NFL. That's 5th. But they were still allowing a rate of 29th in conversion. So it's
fifth in terms of like the fifth longest yards.
Longest.
Yeah.
Yards.
Yeah, that's brutal.
To first on third down, 7.6 yards. So that's the third most in the Josh Allen era. They allowed a 34% third down conversion rate on 3rd and 7+ this season.
Oh, that's awful.
34%. That's the worst in the NFL.
I was waiting for it. Yeah, I was like, that's got to be bottom 3 at best. Yeah, boy. Yeah, I mean, that tracks too. How many times did we see 3rd and 11 first down, 3rd and 13 first down? Yeah.
It's just, it really doesn't make sense. They were doing such a great job of playing high success rate football on offense and defense, staying ahead of schedule as an offense, as a defense, getting the opposing offenses into bad situations, but they just couldn't close on third down. So I went to look, okay, what are things that a defense would do to close on third downs? Quarterback pressure rate, 46.4% quarterback pressure rate on 3rd and 7+. I did all of this stuff on 3rd and 7+, which is categorized as 3rd and longs, because obviously this was where they had trouble because they were forcing teams into 3rd and longs a lot, 5th highest rate in the NFL. Yeah. So they had a 46.4% QB pressure rate on 3rd and long. That was 13th highest, so above league average. 11.3% sack rate on 3rd and long, 8th highest. 4-man rush percentage on these 3rd and longs was 69.1, 10th highest. So they weren't sending blitzes or anything. They were sticking to their guns, send 4, drop 7, whether it's, Sims, creepers, whatever it is. They're sending 4, dropping 7. And they're getting pressure. They're getting sacks relative to their peers across the league. And this is only on 3rd and longs. This is all above league average. 2 of those 3 were top 10. 1 was 13th, which is above league average. Yeah. And then you look at coverage, and it's mostly zone. That's just where they go with things on these 3rd and longs. When they're dropping, they drop into zones, whether it's spot or match. 78.4% zone coverage on 3rd and longs, 5th highest. Cloud coverage was 3rd highest. Cover 3 rate was 11th, and cover 2 rate was 11th. So I was trying to find something to pick on here, and I just couldn't find anything. And then you move on to success rate, and this is where it just gets miserable.
Yeah, I was going to this idea.
So they allowed the 2nd highest success rate when using zone coverage on 3rd and long, and the highest success rate when using man coverage on 3rd and long.
Oh my God.
There's just nothing. So it's
there's nothing.
I went across everything I could. I was like, okay, so do they need to play more man on 3rd and long? Are they too predictable with what they're doing on the back end? Maybe it's too predictable on the front end, but they're getting pressures, they're getting sacks. Yeah. I don't know what it is, but to me, when I see all of these numbers, to me, it screams coverage. To me, it screams something needs to happen at the safety level. Something needs to happen at corner, which is weird because I didn't have a problem with our corners. But so then maybe it is just a safety problem. At the end of the day, it screams coverage to me. If you're getting into 3rd and 7+ and your pressure rates are good, you're dropping 7 more than not. Your sack rate is good. It screams coverage. And can you tell me what's going on 3rd and long?
I think the biggest thing for me, and it's something I talked about a bit throughout the year, it's the disconnect between the coverage and the pass rush. It's the lack of the marriage between the coverage and the pass rush. Talk about it here. We talked about it in the film room. You would see guys with an opportunity to win up front, but the coverage on the back end wasn't meshing or matching with the pass rush up front, and then vice versa. The coverage would do their job, and the pass rush doesn't hold up and because somebody eventually breaks free. It was just that consistent disconnect, which some of that can be unfortunate or poor timing. But I do tie it to the coverages they play, their tendencies on third down, the overall, again, I don't say this disparagingly, but the overall kind of blandness or vanilla-ness to it. Like the most creative that they're going to get on a third down is a sim or a creeper. Like that's it. And then the creativity there is like, who's the dropper? Is it like Von Miller? Is it Groot? Is it Epinesa? Is it both? Like, is it a defensive tackle? Like there's not enough, I think, coming. And I think they could be also more creative. Like they would get some really nice coverage spins where they'd get into Tampa 2 from a single high presentation, or the way that they would kind of muddy, like, is it cover 3? Is it cover 6? Like, when are we spinning our safety? How are they covering down? Like they used, I think, more cover 6 this year in terms of what they were doing. And honestly, some quarter, half, and some half quarter. So like a little bit of both, but mainly more cover 6. And I think just leaning into that creativity a little bit more would help them so much. Like there were so many defenses that I watched this year where I'd be like, oh man, like what an awesome way to get to cover 3. Or, oh man, the way that they drop this guy and like this pressure combined with this coverage and this and that. And I think the Bills are just not fully committed to that world. And I think when you pair that with the safety play on the back end and the overall, I think, lack of athleticism and the lack of juice and the lack of coverage ability, that also ties into what coverages you use, how you spin, how you rotate, when you spin, when you rotate in terms of how close to the snap or post snap, so on and so forth. Because if you have a guy who doesn't have the athleticism, you can't spin him from the box to the post right on the snap if he doesn't have the juice to get to the post. Like Cole Bishop can do that because he has the juice, but there's other opportunities for Cole Bishop. So I think some of it is tied to the players that they specifically have. But I think, again, a lot of it is like the philosophy and not doing it enough from the creativity piece, not doing enough from the dialing it up aspect. Like it's still just, you kind of know what you're going to get a little bit. And I think that the blandness of the philosophy, I think, is the biggest thing.
It comes back
aside
to the
from
point
just
we
the
were talking
disconnected
about
marriage.
on the run defense thing. It's just the vanilla. Okay.
And I think
Man,
then again,
it's tough.
and then if you are that can still work. But
just need the
coverage and
horses
pass
again.
rush those things need to be in sync more often than not. And if they are not, you pay the cost. And they paid the cost more often than not. And I think especially too with just also too their identity of like, okay, we'll have these no cover zones. Like, cool, if somebody can complete something in the flat, that's fine. But then you have to come up, you have to tackle. Or if you don't have athletic guys on the back end and they complete it to somebody who has athleticism, like, are they caught out because they can't fight fire with fire? I think there were so many things that all added up, but the biggest one was the disconnect between coverage and pass rush, and then tied into it, I think overall just and also too, let's keep it like, Dorian Williams was in there this year, and then Cam Lewis was in there a bunch, and Bernard was out for a little bit. And so there were some injuries that played a role, but
for sure.
I think the archetypes that they have, or the body types and skill sets they had at safety, combined with the philosophy and identity defensively, and then the disconnection between coverage and pass rush, I think was the biggest. So you can correct for it in a couple ways, right? Like play better coverage, get a better game wrecker up front. I think some of that pass rush too, I think they got pressure, and the sack rate obviously is good, but like I didn't think they had dudes that just won consistently enough or decisively enough up front from a one-on-one
actually
standpoint.
Create a problem for the quarterback. Yeah.
Somebody who can go and get you, like we talk about all the time, like who was getting you a bucket up front, and I don't think it was that consistently. I know Groot had some great flashes, like he had 11 pressures against Tennessee, which really skewed the numbers, but I think it's a combination, but those like 3 main buckets are it for me. That's a good point.
Yeah, so I mean, personally for me, like this gets me going into safety pretty good. Because I just, if you want to be more disguised, I mean, in the show, like if you want to do it though, like you really have to have the horses in the stable. And I think, like you said, the marriage of pass rush and coverage, if you want to confuse them up front and on the back end, it's just going to muddy the waters and create that half a second that either turns into a sack or that half a second of doubt that, creates an inaccurate pass, whatever it might be. there was just too much confidence from quarterbacks on third downs against the Bills. Like they all seem to feel so comfortable, which is a really weird feeling for us as Bills fans. I feel like when we get teams into third and long, we feel like we're already sending the punt return team out. And it was just a very strange feeling this year.
Well, there were so many drive stats, like bottom of the league in 3 and outs, like bottom of the league in terms of like most plays allowed like per drive, like first in like turnovers per drive. And you're like, oh, okay, but they weren't getting a ton of like stops.
No, they weren't getting
punts.
organic stops. Like it was halfway through that Chiefs game. I was like, what does it feel like to just get a defensive stop? Because I don't know if I felt it since like November.
Well, they didn't. I mean, even the Baltimore game, they didn't. I mean, they had the turnovers that they didn't get a stop. Like
that's
Baltimore
what I mean.
moved it. Baltimore either moved it up and down the field or moved it up and down the field and turned it over. And that's what the defense was for a majority of the year. Someone said in the comments, like the takeaways kind of muddied how this Bills defense was.
Yes.
But no, I think the safety one is a good point. Like the Rapp and Hamlin were more similar than they were different. Yep. And neither's strength was coverage. Neither are rangy, center field, athletic, post safety type of dudes.
But Rapp managed at times to do it.
Yes, like because Rapp is, I would say Rapp is, for as physical as he is, Rapp is a smart football player. He understands where to be. He understands coverage, and he knows how to execute accordingly. Hamlin's strength is being in the box or coming forward. Like he is not a coverage guy, man, zone, anything like that. So, but he's responsible and he'll get to his spot, but he's not a difference maker or a force multiplier from a coverage standpoint. And I think that was some of it too. Like what they could do on the back end, I think was limited by the tools, traits, skill set limitations of who they had at safety.
Sure.
I am very interested in that position because I don't have it in front of me now, but I know like for as much as that was a 3-year deal for Rapp this past year, they could cut him this offseason and not really have like a crazy penalty. Like it could happen.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to. Like my thought is, okay, you have Cole Bishop and Taylor Rapp as your 2 safeties, which is fine, but also
you want more investment. You want to see what else can happen. I mean, that's training camp every year. The whole iron sharpens iron thing that gets said every single year. You want people to compete for those spots. There's a potential out. It says this year, 1.3 million in dead cap.
Yes. Nice. Good call. You up on Spot Track?
Yeah.
Yeah, good call. So like they could cut Rapp this year and move on, and it's a 1.3 dead cap.
Which I'm not necessarily advocating for.
No.
But I'm also not saying he should just be locked in as the starter.
Yes. I'm putting it out there more as of like, and I'm putting it out there more as of like someone being like, he just signed a 3-year deal, he's not going anywhere. It's like, they have an out, like if they really wanted to like force that hand. And I'm fine with Rapp. I still don't think Cole Bishop is a great fit for what this defense is. I think his skill set is like a monster man hybrid is better. Like I think I'm going to keep saying this example, like Cole Bishop belongs in like the Patriots defense or like the Baltimore Ravens defense, where you've got this dude who can be an apex. He can be a safety, but he's really great and creative around the box, in and around the line of scrimmage. You can blitz him. You can drop him to the hook curls, the flats. He can man up on tight ends or running backs, and you can drop him every once in a while. So I think his fit is still interesting as like a 2-high safety, like a cover 2 quarter safety, or even a single high post safety. Like I think he can do it with the athleticism. But I still think I still question his fit a little bit, but the athleticism plays. So we'll kind of see. I just do have questions for that spot. And then again, I do think the pro for Cole Bishop is I do think the secondary needs to get more athletic, and he is a significant move in that direction. But schematically, I'm just very interested.
I almost wonder if the plan, whatever happened with Mike Edwards, I almost wonder if the plan this year with Cole Bishop was to make him the dime corner. He was never supposed to be starting at safety. You were supposed to have 2 starting safeties. You're supposed to have 2 starting quarterbacks. You're supposed to have Taron Johnson and then Cole Bishop as your other dime corner. So you can line him up freely. You can be very versatile with how you use him because he's a dime corner.
Yeah, he's a dime DB. You can do whatever, get creative. You got 3 safeties on the field. Who's doing what? Who's going where? And we've seen so many. I mean, part of one of the newer trends in NFL football, college, it's been for a bit, but 3 safety defenses, 3 high looks, like, what are you doing? But really those 3 safety defenses, because you don't
Yeah,
know, like, who's dropping, who's coming
exactly.
forward, and where. Who's going to be a cloud guy? Who's going to be a hook girl? Who's the apex? Who's a safety? Is it single eye? Is it double?
Because
So on and so forth.
we know his strengths are closer to the box and closer to the line of scrimmage, but like you said, like he has the athleticism to work further
Yes.
away from the line of scrimmage. It's just not where his current strength is. Like he could grow into that for all we
Yes,
know.
100%. Gets more time on task. That could
Yeah,
happen.
for
But
all we know. But that's why it feels like maybe the year one plan was always to make him that dime safety.
that is
I don't know.
interesting.
I
I
don't
do
know for
think there
sure.
was muddiness with like
The
I
Mike
think if Mike
Edwards
Edwards
thing.
didn't get hurt so much in the offseason, yeah, if Mike Edwards didn't get hurt so like much in offseason and camp, I feel like it was going to be Mike Edwards and Taylor Rapp.
Yeah,
And then
that's kind of my I thought
even
too.
Bishop a little bit. Bishop gets hurt and misses how much of the first
Right,
season. So I don't
right.
know. Like it's just weird how this position group went and changed from what they had in Poyer and Hyde and what they valued there, to then how they changed it to going to Rapp and Hamlin
Yeah.
by choice, but also maybe not. And then you're drafting Cole Bishop, who isn't necessarily an archetype fit. Like someone
But
said
they
it.
loved him. They
Yeah.
loved him.
But they also, someone else said it, like, I hope Cole Bishop doesn't turn into, I hope Bishop doesn't become an Elam where he never fits and is a waste. And I was going to say, like, they loved Elam too.
Yeah,
And that didn't
yeah.
work. Like, I didn't think Cole Bishop was bad. I just didn't view him as like a safety. Like when I was scouting him, like he factored into my rankings, but I didn't view him as like a true safety. I thought he was better as this, how we want to
Swiss Army
verbalize it.
knife.
Yeah. Monster man, Swiss Army knife, rover, like whatever kind of verbiage, again, big nickel, apex, whatever you
Yeah,
want to do, like however you want to label it, because him and Sione Vaki at Utah were
yeah.
just that. Like they were just all around the box, blitzing, rushing. Then they drop deep and do stuff. But I still question his fit. But again, the athleticism, time on task, rookie. We'll see how does Hamlin factor in and Rapp and like that whole group. It's just a weird way that they've gone at safety. And I do think the skill set redundancy of Rapp and Hamlin
Yeah.
hindered them a bit.
Yeah.
And then knowing what those skill sets are and what they lack, I think hindered the defense, like in terms of a chain reaction in a negative sense, unfortunately, even though they're both very responsible and reliable.
We've hit skill set redundancy 3-4 times today. I hope you all had that on your bingo card multiple times.
Colloquially, that's my top one. What I know we're gonna start to wrap in a little bit. What else? Again, no pun intended. Any other points?
No, the only other thing was just kind of the 4-man rush stuff, but it kind of came up in third down defense. So
Okay.
there's not much to add there. We had a little bit of a conversation on defensive line and just the Bean McDermott era on building this defensive line and the shortcomings there. Like it just needs to get figured out.
Sure.
It's close. It's really not to say it's like abysmal or anything like that. Like it's really not like a glaring problem. I guess the defensive tackle part and the run game part is a glaring problem. But like from a pass rush perspective, it's not far off. It's not like terribly far away. It's just not there. It's just not there right now. And they've been chasing this idea of it for so long. And I think that's what, kind of like you said about the Chiefs, it makes it feel further away than it actually is.
I think they either, from a pass rush standpoint, from a 4-down perspective, again, having stuff on the interior will help.
Yeah,
I think they need a true pass rushing edge one, like they had with Leonard Floyd when he was healthy. I still maintain that he was hurt on the back end of the year with Buffalo 2 years ago. They either need a true one pass rushing edge, or they need another strong 2 to go with group. I liked what AJ Epinesa did this year. I think he's more of a 3. I don't think he's a 2. Vaughn flashed some 2 at times, but it just wasn't there from a snap share perspective. Maybe it will be this year. I do think the numbers for the playoffs for him were heavily overblown. Like people were talking about, oh, his pass rush productivity. Look at all these pressures. He was coming off as like a free runner sometimes. And then like Bo Nix is rolling out and he gets pinned inside, but it's credited as a pressure. Like I think Vaughn can be a fine high end 3, low end 2. I think of that for AJ Epinesa a bit. AJ Epinesa actually kind of moved to more of a run defender in terms of his strength and as a pass rusher. which was fine, like, because you need that at that spot, right? But I think from a pass rush standpoint, they either need a true one coming off the edge as a pass rusher, or they need a high-end 2, and then they can go from there. So I think, again, it comes down to body type. It comes down to skill set. Where do they get those guys? Are they paying them in free agency? Is it a trade? Is it in the draft?
Hey, is it Javon Solomon developing?
Fair. Like, he showed some flashes this year that I was very encouraged by. I still think his size in some ways, is going to be concerning, but fair. I think they do need reinforcements on the defensive line, interior versus the run, and on the edge, just dudes who can get you a bucket. And again, it doesn't have to be an every down guy. Like, you can get me a dude who's a pass rush specialist, and he plays on third down, but he's got to win more. He's got to be more of a problem. Like, so when you're watching the broadcast, the announcers are like, oh, Timmy's on the field now, he's hunting, and then bang, you get a sack, or you need that juice generator off the edge. Either legit as a 1, or again, a high end 2 to kind of play with Vaughn. You either need with Groot, you either need like an A- or an A guy, or another B+ instead of a B- and then Greg Rousseau. Because again, Groot still isn't like a bucket getter as a pass rusher. Run defender, yes.
He's the dictator on the defensive line this year, and he's not at the point where he should be the dictator. He's close, but
yes,
it's a disservice to him that he is.
Absolutely. Kendall, any final thoughts for the people before we wind down and say goodbye?
This is still a really good football team, everyone. Like, I'm still really confident and really pleased with the season. I'm not pleased with the outcome, but I'm pleased with the season. And this is still a really good football team that's ahead of schedule. They know what they're doing. They have a great culture. They have a lot of great people, a lot of good DNA. They're close. And I know we've said this for years, and they're always close, but hey, at least we get to watch entertaining football, because we didn't get to watch entertaining football for a long time. We were walking into Sundays with a 30 rack and to spare. There was nothing entertaining about those Sundays other than just looking at the couch that you were going to sit on for 8 hours. It was just, it's a much better time to be in, but it also hurts more because it's so much more relevant than it ever was. We're in the news cycle more than we ever were. And it's tough, but it's also rewarding for 20 weeks. So right. I'll take those 20 weeks, but hopefully we can get to 21, 22.
Absolutely. Very well said. I like that. And I don't think I could say it any better. I think you hit the nail right on the head. I'm going to throw up the banner for the sponsor. You folks know One Pie Pizza, the best pizza in Buffalo, New York. Sweet sauce pie, cup and char pepperoni, a great cheese and sauce ratio. They break up all the individual toppings. You get veggies and stuff. They sprinkle them evenly. They have a pizza named after the brand and the show. It is delicious. It also is partly named after Josh Allen. Get yourself some One Pie Pizza. I say it every week, and I say it every week. They are the best pizza in Buffalo, New York. I don't say that because they sponsor the show. They sponsor the show because I think they're the best pizza. And they're also really good people. I mentioned every week all the different initiatives, the charity drives, what they do for the community, partnering with Roswell, partnering with the SPCA, the Alzheimer's Foundation, Toys for Tots, just a multitude of forms and functions that they take to better the community, aside from just giving them delicious food. So treat your taste buds, treat yourself to some One Pie Pizza. They also have great breakfast pizzas, catering options, like all these different mac and cheeses that they're diving into now that are really good. So go check out One Pie Pizza. Online menu can be found in the episode show notes, whether here on YouTube or whichever podcasting app or platform you are listening to this show on. Appreciate you folks riding with us in this first off-season edition episode of Disguised Coverage. Yep, as Kendall's face says it, because the Bills have been eliminated. And so here we are in this off-season discussion. Appreciate you folks. Hope you enjoyed this episode, this video. If you're here on YouTube, please, thank you. Drop a like on this video. Likes are the lifeblood of these live streams and for the algorithm. So please drop a like on this video here on YouTube. Turn on notifications for the Disguised Coverage playlist. Subscribe to the Cover One channel. If you're listening on one of the podcasting apps or platforms, that's very much appreciated too. Please rate and review and subscribe on whichever podcasting app or platform you're listening to this show on. Tell your family and friends and loved ones about how awesome this show is. If you thought this show was terrible, tell your enemies and try and ruin their day by making them watch it. Thank you very much to Anthony, Robert, Robin, and Caleb for your super chats in this episode. Thank you very much to everybody in the comments for making this a really fun and engaging episode. Appreciate you folks. If there was anything you put into the chat that didn't get answered or didn't get gotten to. I don't know if that's proper verbiage. You're the word man now, so I don't even know. Word man's not a thing, but whatever. I appreciate you folks. Thank you very much. Get at us or at me on Twitter at pro__ant. That's pro 2_ANT. Get at me on Blue Sky at pro_ant. If there was something that I didn't get to in the chat or comments, question, thought, comments, concern, get at me. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Kick it back here for Greg and Aaron in about 5 or 6 minutes for Cover One Buffalo. We hope you and your family and friends and loved ones are all doing well and staying safe. Be kind to one another. Take care of one another. I will see you next week, Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern, for another episode of Disguise Coverage. Until then, I'm Anthony Prohaska. That's Kendall Mirsky. He's awesome. Hopefully, he'll be joining me a little bit more this offseason, as is tradition. We'll see you when we see you. Godspeed. And as always, go Bills.